On August 18, 2010, Ben McDaniel enters the grounds of Vortex Spring, a popular diving facility in Northwest Florida, as he often does. What begins as a routine dive turns into a mysterious missing person case. Ben leaves his beloved dog behind and disappears without a trace. Did a tragic accident occur during his dive? Did Ben disappear voluntarily? Or was he the victim of a crime? In today's video, we discuss the disappearance of Ben McDaniel and get to the bottom of these questions. Ben McDaniel was born on April 15, 1980, near Memphis, Tennessee. He is the oldest of 3 children. Ben grew up on a large farm with his younger brothers Tim and Paul. The family placed great importance on togetherness, sports, and a connection to nature. Ben's adventurous streak became apparent at an early age. He was athletic, curious, and loved to take on new challenges. His parents described him as cheerful and strong-willed. He was a young man with clear ideas and a mind of his own. Ben was particularly close to his youngest brother, Paul. The two spent a lot of time together, shared similar interests, and were inseparable. This made it all the more difficult for Ben when Paul died in 2008 at the age of only 22. It was Ben himself who found his brother's body. Initially, it is assumed that he died of a sudden stroke. But later it becomes public knowledge that Paul died of an overdose, a mixture of opiates and benzodiazepine. For Ben, the truth is almost unbearable. At this point, Ben is already under a lot of pressure. The financial crisis forced him to give up his own construction company. He was left with over $50,000 in debt, lost his house, his marriage fell apart, and with it, his entire life plan. From one moment to the next, he was left with nothing. At the beginning of 2009, he moved back into his parents' house. During this time, he fell into a deep depression. His mother Shelby realizes that Ben needs a fresh start, distance from the past, and a chance to recover. She suggests that he take some time off and offers him a place to stay at her beach house in Santa Rosa Beach, Florida. It is to be a sabbatical, a year of reorientation, financially supported by the family. In April 2010, Ben moved into the beach house. His dog, a Labrador, accompanied him. The new environment did him good and he began to stabilize. The mild climate, the proximity to the water, and the new routine helped him regain his footing. Ben makes new friends and seems more balanced and friendly. He starts diving again, a passion he has had since childhood. He can now often be found at Vortex Spring, a commercial diving facility near his new home. There is a large pool with crystal clear spring water and a complex and deeply branched cave system beneath the surface. Vortex Spring is popular with diving enthusiasts from all over North America, not least because of the technically demanding cave system, which offers special challenges for experienced divers. Ben is fascinated and quickly becomes a regular visitor. He dives often, talks to the facility staff, and conscientiously documents his dives. It seems as if he has found a new purpose in life. Friends later report that Ben has been revitalized in Florida. He seems focused, curious, and full of energy. This is a relief for his family. They can sense how much diving fulfills him. In August 2010, Ben travels to Memphis for a few days to celebrate his mother's birthday. It is an emotional reunion. His family notices how well he is doing. Ben is relaxed, talks a lot, and seems happy. For his parents and his brother Tim, it is wonderful to see how their eldest son has recovered from the blows of the past few years. 2 days later, Ben returns to Florida. At this point, no one suspects that this will be the last time they will see him alive. On August 18th, Ben drives to Vortex Spring as usual. He arrives with his equipment, prepares carefully, and spends the entire afternoon at the dive center. He is alone, going over his notes and checking his equipment several times. Witnesses report that he spends a lot of time inspecting the entrance to the cave. It seems as if he is following a specific plan. Ben makes several dives during the course of the day. At around 7 p.m., he begins his last dive of the day. He dives deeper than usual, down to about 90 meters into an area of the cave that is actually blocked off by a gate and can only be entered with a special certificate. 2 employees of the diving center see him underwater as he swims past them. It is the last time anyone sees Ben McDaniel. 2 days after the dive, an employee at the facility notices that Ben's black pickup truck is still in the parking lot. The employee remembers seeing Ben in the cave last. He immediately realizes that something is wrong and informs the police. A search operation is launched immediately. 5 professional cave divers descend into the cave. At this point, no one expects to find Ben alive. A person cannot survive for 2 days without air at a depth of 90 meters. The search becomes a rescue mission. The divers begin their investigation in the cave. They cross the first and second drops and advance to the third and deepest level of the system. They find no clues or traces of Ben McDaniel. Neither equipment nor personal belongings can be found. The search remains unsuccessful. The police then turn their attention to Ben's black pickup truck, which is still locked in the parking lot. Inside, investigators find no evidence of a crime. Ben's cell phone is clearly visible on the center console. In the glove compartment, they find an envelope containing a large amount of cash. Ben had apparently left it there for emergencies. But even that is not a direct indication of a planned escape or outside interference. During a search of his beach house, they find Ben's dog in very poor condition. It appears that he has not been fed for 2 days. It is now clear that Ben has indeed disappeared and has not been home since his last diving trip. An extended search operation is organized for the following day. This time, several experienced cave divers join the search to explore further areas of the complex. They spend hours feeling their way through the dark cave system. Finally, they discover the first clue. 3 diving tanks that clearly belong to Ben. They are marked with his last name. The first tank, an aluminum 80, is located at a depth of around 60 meters and is still equipped with a regulator. 2 more tanks without regulators are attached to an underwater communication point known as the talk box in the piano room. They also belong to Ben. A closer inspection reveals that all 3 tanks contain normal breathing air. However, diving at this depth would require a special gas mixture that takes into account the increased pressure and nitrogen balance. The absence of such a gas mixture raises questions. Ben should have known about this. Was he careless and made a mistake? Or did someone deliberately place the tanks there to create a certain image? The fill levels of the tanks are analyzed. 1 tank is full, 1 is half full, and 1 is almost empty. This means that Ben would theoretically have had enough air to resurface. An accident caused by a sudden lack of oxygen can therefore be almost completely ruled out. Renowned cave diver Ed Sorensen, one of the most experienced and respected divers in the United States, becomes aware of the case. He knows the risks of cave diving like no other. Sorensen announces that he will search the caves himself. A week later, he travels to Florida. Using a marking system, Sorensen carefully maps the cave to ensure that he does not search any section twice. He pushes himself to his limits and dives over 500 meters into the cave system. But even he finds no trace of Ben. He is certain that Ben is not in the cave. His conclusion is clear. If he was down there, I would have found him. This is a serious setback for Ben's family. In their desperation, they offer a reward of $10,000. But this decision is met with criticism, especially from the diving community. Many feel it is irresponsible that inexperienced or ambitious divers could now risk their lives to get the reward. Even among professionals, the cave is considered extremely dangerous. The police are not involved in the diving operations, but are using cadaver dogs. They are searching directly at the surface of the main pool, exactly where the entrance to the cave is located. Water samples are then taken. The analysis reveals evidence of bacteria that may be associated with decomposition. However, it cannot be confirmed whether these are human remains. Eels and larger fish also live in the cave, and their decomposition could also cause these readings. So the trail remains unclear. 6 months after Ben's disappearance, there are still no new leads. The family increases the reward to $30,000. Another step that is criticized. The diving community is discussing whether Ben himself bears at least some of the responsibility, as he entered restricted areas without the necessary training. Many consider it inappropriate that other divers should risk their lives for a potentially hopeless recovery. And then what many had warned about happens. Diver Larry Higginbotham dies during a dive in Vortex Spring. It is unclear whether he was specifically searching for Ben. Some believe he was motivated by the large reward. Others say it was an independent dive. In any case, Ben's family subsequently withdraws the reward entirely. In 2012, the family receives support once again, this time from Australia. World-renowned cave diver Jill Heinerth and her husband offer to search for Ben one last time. Heinerth has already participated in risky rescue missions around the world and is considered an absolute expert in her field. She travels to Florida and dives into the cave system, this time with a camera to document everything. The goal is to be able to show Ben's mother exactly where the search took place. During her dive, she discovers a shovel, a tool used by cave divers to remove sediment or move through narrow passages. However, there is no indication that the shovel belongs to Ben. Heinerth's mission is also unsuccessful. Jill Heinerth's video footage later becomes part of the documentary Ben's Vortex. Despite her extraordinary expertise and extensive experience, she is unable to find even a trace of Ben. And because of this, many have a different opinion about what might have happened to Ben McDaniel. There are 4 main theories. Let's take a closer look at them. The first theory is that Ben was the victim of a crime. The family hires a private investigator who, during her investigations, discovers criminal connections between several people associated with Vortex Spring. It is speculated that Ben did not die underwater, but was murdered on land, and his disappearance was staged as a diving accident with the help of the bottles. This is supported by the fact that several witnesses reported seeing a violent argument between a man and a group of teenagers on the day of Ben's disappearance. However, it could not be determined whether the man was Ben and whether this argument had anything to do with his disappearance. The diving tanks that were found also appear to have been placed there deliberately. His name is clearly visible, and they are in a place where they would definitely have been found. However, there are no further clues pointing to a crime. Another theory is that Ben took his own life. This theory is based on the fact that Ben lost everything in the months before his disappearance. His company, his house, his marriage. He was still particularly affected by the death of his brother Paul. Although Ben seemed more stable recently and his family described him as cheerful, motivated, and full of plans for the future, we know from many other cases that this impression can be deceptive. The cave, which was a place of peace and adventure for him, may have been deliberately chosen as a place where no one would find him. However, Ben's family vehemently disagrees with this theory. They saw him shortly before he disappeared. His mother says she saw him during the worst phases of his depression. But this time, it was different. Besides, if he really wanted to commit suicide, he wouldn't have left behind his beloved dog, Spooner. That would have been unthinkable for him. The question of why his body was never found also remains unanswered. The search operation, the camera footage, and the dives into the deepest areas would very likely have provided clues. The third theory is that Ben faked his death to start a new life. This sounds absurd to many, but some aspects support this idea. Ben had high debts, no career prospects, and had disappeared from nowhere before. Maybe this time he wanted to leave everything behind. Proponents of this theory argue that he could have deliberately placed his bottles to lay a false trail. As mentioned above, the position seems very conspicuous and the name tag very clear. The timing of his dive, in the evening when there were only a few people left on site, could also have been chosen deliberately. There is speculation that Ben got another car and may have fled abroad, perhaps to Mexico. However, this theory is also met with resistance, especially from his family. The strongest evidence against it is his dog, Spooner. Ben would never have locked him up without food and left him in his house. In an interview, his mother says, "I don't believe in suicide or voluntary disappearance." The fourth, and in the opinion of many, the most likely theory is an accident. Ben was not a certified cave diver. He had neither the necessary training nor official permission to enter the deeper sections of the cave. And yet he had been in these forbidden areas several times. An employee at the facility had observed him days earlier squeezing through a gap next to the safety fence to gain access to the restricted area. On the day of his disappearance, the same employee even opened the gate for him, hoping it would be safer than letting him sneak back in. Many believe that Ben had an accident during his last dive. Perhaps he lost his bearings, got stuck in a narrow passage, or had problems with his equipment. Technical failure or oxygen poisoning cannot be ruled out either. The cave is deep, complex, with dangerous branches and very limited visibility. There are many scenarios in which a fatal accident is possible. But even with this theory, one central problem remains. If Ben really did have an accident in the cave, why has he never been found? And that brings us to the end of today's video. A mysterious and, to this day, unsolved missing person case. What makes it particularly tragic is that, despite state-of-the-art technology, dozens of dives and international assistance, not a single trace of Ben has been found. What do you think about this case and the theories surrounding it? What do you think happened to Ben McDaniel? Feel free to write your thoughts in the comments, which will also help support this channel. Also, remember to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. It helps me more than you think. Other than that, there's not much more to say. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this video. I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, bye everyone.